folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have Patrick Boylan, who is the elected Nevada University Regent, District number 5. Jim, you got anything?
No, actually, other than congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It was, it was an interesting election because whichever person won, I thought would do a really good job.
Thank you.
And whether it was your opponent or yourself,
Right.
I thought both were very well qualified, and it was nice. It was nice to see when we do our endorsement interviews. Sometimes it gets a little frustrating because it's like sometimes when you do these endorsement interviews, you got like really qualified candidates all running for one area, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other area, you're like, really?
Why are they in the race?
It's like, come on now.
What happened?
Who could we pick?
So I just want to congratulate you on your win, and I want to thank you very much for being willing to come in and spend some time with us this afternoon and answer questions. So.
Oh, great. I appreciate you guys calling me. And Nick's a great guy.
Yeah.
And, like you said, he was very helpful to you. So he's a great guy also, yeah. And so was Childs, the big guy that came here.
Yeah.
The big guy, is that what you call him?
He was about as big as you, I think.
Big guy.
Right.
Well, he's not as big as Steve. I mean,
He's not as big as Steve, okay.
his mouth
I'm hung a little longer than he is.
Oh, there you go. Good one, okay.
Isn't that right, Kevin?
That's a good one. That's really good. Awesome. That's good. On that note.
Mr. Boylan.
That's too good.
Okay, so could you give us a...
Oh, where do we go from here?
All right. Oh, no. Oh, boy. Mr. Boylan.
Yes. Just call me Patrick or Patty. It's
So
okay.
Patrick, can I call you Patty Cakes?
Yes, you can do that. No, that's with a T, and this is a D. Like Paddy Wagon.
So you're the elect
Yes.
for Board of Regent District number 5.
Yes, sir.
Give us a background, please.
Sure. I've been in education since I think the 80s.
Okay.
When I got my bachelor's from UNLV in management information. No, crisis and emergency management came later, the master's.
Okay.
But I got my bachelor's in management information systems, and I went off to train people, different businesses, and PCs were a new thing, computers were new to everybody.
Right.
And I went on to teach at the community college.
Okay.
I taught at most of them, even across the street.
So should we call you Professor Boylan?
Oh, I never got to that level, but I was an assistant professor
Okay.
later on when I was the chair of the Department of Homeland Security
Oh, wow.
in Indiana. I started the first bachelor's program in Homeland Security.
Okay.
And I got my master's, like I said, from UNLV again. Well, that was another degree from there. And Bill Young, the former sheriff, as well as Joe Lombardo, they were in my cohort. I remember that. And we got our masters together. I went on to start that program, and then I started a non-profit, and it really was a non-profit. Didn't make much money, but I kept at it. It was the Center for Strategic Analysis.
Okay.
And I did a lot of training at Nellis Air Force Base for the police department, for civilians, at different Army bases in Fort Worth, in San Antonio, and even in DC. I used to go and do seminars. That was my specialty, seminars in, should we say, counterterrorism, irregular warfare. because I grew up in faraway places with strange sounding names. My dad was in the RAF, and that's the Royal Air Force, as most of the Air Force guys know. In England, there you go. But that's not by the Meinhof German terrorist group, the RAF. When I say that, people, RAF, no, it's this, even though he was.
German terrorist.
I know, yeah, it's this is the Royal Air Force.
Did they endorse you?
I'm really. Thank you. I've heard worse, but yeah, and I knew a lot about contemporary terrorism. And being a geologist and working in Afghanistan.
I gotta ask, what is contemporary terrorism?
Well, to me, that's a phrase that is what we are seeing these days, which is basically Islamic terrorism. I am not concerned with political correctness. I say it as I see it. Right. And I understand Islam. I've taught about it. I've taught people. I speak many languages from 5. I'm not going to say which ones, but yeah.
You can speak 5 languages?
Yes, and one is Drunklish, that's the 6th.
Drunkish.
After English, Drunklish, no. But yes, I do. Right, there you go. And it gets terrible after a while. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and some time in Iran. And
wow.
Yes, I used to be a geologist there and a journalist for different people.
That's not in your background here.
I don't say it all in my. That's just a miniature.
Right.
This thing about me. I've been around a while, I guess. Been around the block. But sticking to, sorry, you get me started, and you asked me about contemporary terrorism, so I went off in that direction. And that's what I've done mainly. That's what I've been training people, educating people, giving classes at UNLV also for different organizations and people. I did my last seminar about a year and a half back. I'm semi-retired, but I don't want to retire. I want to keep doing something, giving back. And I think in education, is the best way to do it to the kids, the future of this country. Right. And I feel, since I was also on the State Board of Education, I was an elected member there, I served there, it's in me to educate people, whether they like it or not. Hey, you can listen to this. Right. No, but if they're willing to learn, I'm there to teach you or teach anybody else. So I'm an educator at heart.
So explain,
please
real quick, just a part of your background,
sure,
or bio as well. State Board Regent. Mm-hmm. Can you, because the last time I tried to say this, I screwed it all up. So I'm just going to stick to what your office is that you've been elected to. State Board Regent. What?
Well, it's the.
What is it? What do they do? Like, what's the role? Because there's. People get confused because they don't understand, okay, wait, are you on the, they don't get the difference between being on the Clark County School Board, State Board Regent.
State Board of Education, all these names get you confused.
Yeah, right.
Well, basically, they refer to it as NSHE, which is the acronym. As you guys know, everything is an acronym. And it's the Nevada System of Higher Education.
Right.
So it's the colleges and universities all over Nevada, not just in Las Vegas. Even though like me, I'm a regent elect for District 5, but I really serve all of Nevada, all of education. I want to improve the education. That's hopefully
what falls under your umbrella, though, specifically? Well, like what colleges?
All the colleges and universities, community colleges, Nevada State College, UNR, UNLV, etc. Not the private colleges.
Well, how about like what you were talking about with like across the street?
Yes, they're part of it.
Okay.
And their president, a really nice fellow. I forget his name now because I'm just meeting everybody once.
Right. Yeah.
But he's a real nice guy. And I've taught you, like I said, but those were computer classes a long time back. He doesn't know me. So it's all the colleges, and we set the procedures, you can say, for how things will go. There's a big budget, and now the latest thing was about the budget cuts.
Yeah.
Thanks to COVID or whatever reasons. We've had to deal with those rearranged things. Some colleges are closing down sections because there isn't enough money, enough students coming in. So those are the policies that we set. We don't do human resources. We have nothing to do. We don't interfere in that.
Right.
But we do set procedures like we select the chancellor, and that's a big thing. And we also usually have to select the presidents of the different colleges and universities. We don't hire or fire anybody. I'm not even in there yet. It's going to be on the 5th.
Right.
But that's what the regents do. I apologize. But and they've done a good job so far. There have been issues. Every organization has issues, especially when you have so many people together. And usually really intelligent people. Like you see the people on the board, they're educators, PhDs, doctors, trainers, all kinds of people who have their idea of how things should be.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Oh.
That is what our function is. Now we meet I think every other month or 6 weeks. I still have to get all the details to that. And we used to go, or the regents used to go to the different universities, UNR, or the different colleges like...
Toro.
No, Toro is a private college.
University of Phoenix?
No, private colleges. Yeah, I know. I wish they did come under the regents. I wish there was a systemic thing for education in Nevada, but there isn't.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah, there's Pepperdine, and there's some big ones. But they are, these private schools and colleges. Some of them are great, like Toro, you said.
Yeah.
And the president is Shelley Berkeley right now. Really lovely lady, and she knows what she's doing. She used to be a regent and congresswoman. Thank you. So they're good, but some of them come and go.
Yeah, speaking on that, now obviously in your current elected position,
Sure.
you probably don't have any influence on that necessarily, but I personally would like to see, I don't know, I honestly, for viewers and listeners, I haven't looked too much into the constitutionality of this, but I would actually, I think it only makes sense personally, that these private colleges, I got my master's degree from the University of Phoenix. But I do honestly think that even if they are a private school like that they should fall under the umbrella of whatever state that they are operating in.
That is such a wonderful idea. That's what I'm pushing for all the time too, and I agree with you on that one. I really do.
Because here's one of the things that frustrated me about it was I really enjoyed the education that I got from the University of Phoenix just because it was tailored more for what I needed, just going back and getting a master's, right? So, being a working professional and things of that nature, but there was always this battle, specifically here in Las Vegas, between them and UNLV. And UNLV was always fighting against the University of Phoenix for them to be credentialed or not, and going back and forth, and then it's there's always this battle too, to when you got your master's degree from the University of Phoenix, they were credentialed, but then 3 years later, I think they lost their credentials again, but then they got it back again and vice versa. I think for just an overall comfort level or for the amount of money I paid them.
Oh yes. Yes.
That I should never have to worry about that.
You shouldn't.
So I think that would be a good idea.
That is great, but that's something you'd have to bring up, or we'd have to bring up with the legislature.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that control that.
Yeah.
This has been a beef of mine because I did teach at some of these private colleges here in Las Vegas, and most of them failed. Well, it wasn't because of me. I taught and they failed, but they're gone, and they did a terrible.
Parental involvement.
There was too much parental involvement. You're right. You know, I interfered. No, I couldn't say more than, you know, what you just said. They really need to have some more state, and the legislature, I believe, should go look into that more than trying to look into and disrupt the NSHE, which is, again, the Nevada System of Higher Education.
And the reason why I bring that up, and then we'll get back to more questions. I'm not trying to make the show about me. I want it to be about you.
Education. No, it's good.
But one of the other reasons why I believe so strongly in that is because I brought it up to certain people, and they're like, well, wait a minute, you're like this anti-government involvement guy in certain things. And I'm like, well, no, hold on a second, though. I said, I'm not an anti-government guy necessarily. Like, there are certain things I think should fall under. My beef was it was always UNLV, when I was going there, this was years ago, UNLV versus University of Phoenix, and then we're going back and forth. And my argument was always like, hey, there are certain things that I really liked about the University of Phoenix, but there were certain things I didn't care for quite as much, and vice versa with UNLV, because UNLV is where I got my bachelor's. So I like I said competition makes both grow stronger.
Sure it does.
So I think if they fall under an umbrella policy, then it's fair for both. So then they can kind of go back and forth, and like I just think it would strengthen both universities.
I couldn't agree with you more, really.
And plus validify too that, like, trust me, you pay a hell of a lot more to go to the University of Phoenix than you do UNLV.
Yes, I know that.
Quite a bit
that's
more.
That's where the money is,
you know?
actually. Yep.
So
that's why they need to be.
That's my take on it.
And they need to be regulated more. I couldn't agree with you more. Really. Thank you.
Mr. Boylan, what's your education credentials?
Sure.
What do you have?
I've got 2 master's degrees from UNLV. The first was in educational leadership.
Okay.
And then I went back for my PhD, actually. And I'd started my PhD program, and I was offered this position to teach at this new program, to enter it and teach. It was a strange dichotomous relationship that a certain colonel was starting this program here. It's a master's program in crisis and emergency management. Actually, it was going to be terrorism and international affairs, which I liked much better, actually. Yeah. But certain people, their feathers get ruffled, you know, in departments and directors of departments and things, and they had to have a say in there, and they ruined the program. So there was one class that I told you, Bill Young and Joe Lombardo, and a bunch of, not a bunch, but a few other senior police officials were in the class. I'm sorry, I don't remember their names now. It was 20 years, 2000.
I just want to put a disclaimer out. The noise that you're hearing, yes, we're under construction.
Oh, it's not a firing range, huh? Okay, I was like,
No, we're in the middle of construction. We went from residential to commercial.
Yes, so. I could tell that, but I was happy. I'm like, okay, I get to use the range after this. It's been a while, but yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, so I got my master's when he heard that I'd written a few articles about 9/11 and terrorism and the different kinds. I'm also certified trainer of weapons of mass destruction. And I know you had some gentlemen and a lady here sometime back, a few days, whenever, and they were talking about the COVID and everything else. I enjoyed it.
Oh, did you watch that show?
Oh, I watch all your shows. Since I met you, I've been like, I like this guy. I'm going to see what he's up to. Yeah,
you're one of the few, because I don't like
one of the few I know. Yeah, my buddy Q and I, that's why we were at that demonstration outside the
Family Court.
Family Court. Yes. That one time we were like, yeah, we we like this guy. Let's do his stuff for a while. Let's do something.
Until we get bored.
Till we get bored.
Oh no, we can't get bored with those guys.
No, you can't actually, and I'm glad you keep it up. I'm glad. But yeah, I watched them. They were very knowledgeable people. Right. They had more knowledge about certain things than I do and others do that I know. And I look at things differently in terrorism because I look at it as far as the psychology, right. The actual people who carry this out. Right. So right. That's why I call it contemporary terrorism. Oh, I've come right back in a circle to educating and terrorism. So yeah, that's my education, right?
The reason why I ask you that question is because several years ago, when people were running for sheriff, a lot of people ran without any type of law enforcement background.
I remember that.
And then the legislature came down and said you have to be in law enforcement for 5 years as a credential before you could run for sheriff.
Yes.
So that got rid of a lot of excess baggage, so to speak. Do you think if anybody runs for university regent, they should have some type of education beyond a high school diploma or a GED?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good one.
Because the reason, I mean, yes. you're supposed to be a role model.
Exactly, that's
and
what I was
you're encouraging people to get higher education. So don't you think you yourself should be one as well?
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. You're a role model in a way. I mean, it's like being someone's practicing medicine. Right. They should have a degree in medicine. Right. Someone's practicing. I don't know, anything if you take, but yeah, I think they should.
Well, are you willing to, because I know you guys have lobbyists, the regents and Board of Ed, I mean, the school district
sure,
and
yes,
universities, they all have lobbyists.
Right, they all do.
Are you willing to maybe get a hold of one of these lobbyists and say, hey, we need to take a good look at our credentials to run for regent. Maybe, the person that's running should at least have an AA. Right. At least have an AA. Yeah. Would you willing to spearhead something like that?
I would actually. I would. I think that's a great point you bring up. And I remember the time when you could run to be a judge, and
you need to be a lawyer.
Now you have to be a lawyer,
and you got to be a lawyer in Muni for 5, or you got to be practicing law for 5.
For 5 years at
Muni,
least.
JP for 5,
right.
District for 10,
yes.
Appellate and Supreme 15. And the reason for that was because of Joe Bonaventure.
And the other lady, there was another lady. Joe
Bonaventure Jr., who only had 2 years practice.
Right, but then I think what you're talking about is Elizabeth.
Some name, I don't remember. There was
wheelchair.
Yeah, she was in the wheelchair.
Oh, Halverson.
Halverson, yeah. Now,
she ran over my foot in that damn wheelchair one time at CCRB meeting.
Did you hit her with a pot? Oh, no. That was her husband.
No, that wasn't me. Hey, that was Randy. Don't blame that on me.
Now we know.
So I'm looking for somebody that's willing to at least introduce a bill in front of the legislature to say if you want to be a university regent, a board of ed, you should at least have a credential of 2 years as have an associate's degree.
At least some education.
At least higher than high school.
That's something.
I would go with bachelor's though, but
at least, something like that. I would have to talk to the Board of Regents, because then I would be representing them. I would have to get it through them, their support. With your support, I would push it, of course, because it's something I do.
Yeah, I'm going to actually play devil's advocate on that.
Go ahead.
But it's an elected position. So isn't that up to the voters to educate themselves on whether they think that person's qualified or not?
Then you could say the same.
I mean, I kind of get the judge thing. I know where you're coming from.
You could say the same for judge. You could be a judge and don't have any type of law degree. You could say the same thing for a sheriff. You could be a sheriff and don't have any type of law enforcement. But somewhere along the line, you need to know what the hell you're doing.
Right.
I mean, especially with kids that are so fragile-minded. You know,
Oh, yes.
you have to have at least some type of college education, some type of certificate or diploma from college or wherever, if you want to be a part of higher education. You can't be a part of higher education if you yourself you're not a higher education yourself.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, to be a role model. I hear you.
You
Yeah.
got to be a role model because kids nowadays, they could look up anybody. They could look you up and know everything about you in
my
about
God.
5 minutes.
You're right.
Oh, Patrick Boylan. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I respect this guy.
Right,
And then they
right.
look somebody else up, be like, oh, this guy just got a high school diploma.
Yeah, right.
Nah, I don't think I'll be listening to him.
And that's how they find out about you, especially the kids these days.
Oh yeah, don't get me started on Google. It's
These
dumbed
kids
down
are-
the entire.
these kids
It's
are
dumbed down the entire generation.
It sure has. You know, I agree with you, and I'd love to think about that and talk to a few people, see what's happening. And you know, where it comes to the judge part, now that's the only one that I don't agree with. I don't know why you need to know the law to be a good judge. That's the only one I
Well,
don't.
you got judicial canons, you got Nevada revised statutes,
Sure.
you got federal laws.
And you know that's why you go to judges college or whatever.
Judicial college.
Yeah.
Judicial
And I know a lot.
And you're good.
I know a lot
Yes.
about the law, but I'm not.
But with that,
I didn't go to law school, or do I have a?
that would
law
not
degree?
stop you from being a good judge, is how I look at it. Because remember, judges are just lawyers in robes. And what
but
do
we-
we do and say about lawyers?
Right. We
They're
don't
the
want. We
worst
don't want a whole
judge.
bunch of family court judges to.
Yeah, right. Now that's a different story. I follow you on that.
I'm like, okay, they don't even know the
There's a lot of
law.
legislation they need to
There's a
change
lot.
there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I follow you on that. I hear you.
So what is your the biggest change that you want to see, that you want to really drive?
Well, to me, we are a tier 1 university, and I think Reno is also, and that's as far as research is concerned. But I would like more research in things like emergency management, in terrorism. Something like what happened now, you could think of it as a terrorist act. It isn't. Don't quote me on that. You could say we're not prepared for it. Why aren't we? I need a think tank here, is what I'm saying. We're not a think tank. You know, we've got lots of research. There's some great people in our science departments that are working on computer stuff and advanced materials and robotics, etc., etc.
Especially, I've always wondered why, specifically, and I'm not trying to pick on Reno, but why Las Vegas isn't. I mean, it is now, obviously, with COVID and certain things that went on the last year or whatever, it's not quite the tourist destination right now that it used to be. Hopefully, we get back there because we need it. But
We'll get back there.
But one of
I think so,
the
too.
but one of the things that, like, and I know, like, I'm not the hugest fan of Metro on certain issues, and certain issues I think they do a really good job. But the amount of stuff and threats that they've had to deal with over the years, when you think about, you know, after September 11th, like, do we have fireworks that year on the Strip or whatever, and like certain counterterrorism measures and stuff. Like, why wouldn't Las Vegas, of all places, one of the world's biggest destinations, not
Have a
be,
think, yes, be prepared and be looking into. You got me stymied on that one. I have no idea.
And I just wanted to add that
Yes, sir.
to be a constable, you have to be post certified. Ask the constable in North Las Vegas.
Okay, right. Yes. There you go. Then you also have the POSD, right? Yeah, I get you on that one too. Yeah, and the constable in, what was it, in Henderson or something? Anyway, we get carried away with that. But I agree with you totally. We do need to be prepared for. We were totally caught with our pants down, to use a weird phrase there.
And your accent
Yes.
is English.
It's a mixture of Irish and, well, let me put it like this, English and Irish and
Not Australian.
Not Australian, no, but it's. I've won a lot of beers on, people trying to figure out my accent before they know my name. I won a lot of beers, and I'm like, hey, if you figure it out, I buy you two. If you don't, just buy me one. It's very tough.
Nice.
It's because I've lived in so many different places,
Right.
and because my dad was Irish, and
Is Irish.
no, he's passed away.
Oh,
actually.
my condolences.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I didn't know him too good. It was my mom that brought me up. So he was a good man, but a drunk. So, and what's that about the Irish and mix?
Irish loves their beer, though.
Don't they? Don't they? There's a bit too much. And the beer doesn't love them. I know. I'm an example. He's looking at my beer belly. He's like, oh, yeah, I can tell.
Oh, trust me, Mr. Sampson could tell you stories about me.
Nice, I like that.
I am the prototypical redneck.
There you go.
He makes moonshine
Oh, nice.
in his basement.
In his basement. What else do you do in the basement? Moonshine, computers, moonshine. You can't grow that stuff anymore, so hash, so you just make moonshine.
He's got an RV in his backyard.
Oh, that's the best way to do it. Go out in the desert, make it outstanding. No, but yeah, my accent's all mixed up just from, and then being in America for so long, being in Las Vegas and traveling. Mexico, I've been, not that I sound anything Hispanic or anything, but I've been around the place, so I picked up, and I was too old to change by the time I got here. Yeah. My boys are born and bred here, so you could never tell anything about them. One of them is married now, and he has 2 little puppies of his own. So he's the lead singer of the band that I was telling you about. But yeah, I've loved being here. I think just about the best place in the world to me is America, because I've seen so many other places, and I tell my sons that. I'm like, you gotta go and stay there. You gotta go and live there. You could take your friends there. Yeah. You dumbasses, just go there and see what happens, and then come back and tell me that this is terrible.
Yeah,
Or is it just
you know, it's interesting you bring that up, because I always tell people they complain about stuff that goes on in this country, and I'm like, hey, we're still a work in progress.
True.
I said, but at
We're young, too.
Yeah, and I just explained to him, I'm like, but with the exception probably, I guess, would be the Roman Empire, right? Give me an example of another country that has accumulated as much wealth and has the kind of power that this nation has, that's used it for more good, tried to use it for more good than bad. Give me an example of another country.
No, good point. I love the freedom here, because I've heard some of your guys who've been sitting here, the things they've said, and they're still around, and they could say it, and you could say it, I could say it. I've said some strong things about the government, about people, about the way things are run. I'm still here.
Well, that's how you make change.
Exactly.
You got to stand up and say something.
You've got to stand up and say something, and we can do it in this country. I know we can do it in England and Ireland, but not so much. There's a lot of stuff there I couldn't say in my business that I say about contemporary terrorism. It's not politically correct.
Right.
I could never say it in England or Ireland or Europe anyway.
Yeah, the Queen would behead you.
That's about it. I know, by herself, the old lady.
Especially when you start getting into, and I definitely don't have an issue with England or Ireland.
Sure.
But especially when you get into, because those countries are very much older than the United States, obviously, and they're under a parliamentary system, and they're still kind of go back to the old, like, classes stay within classes.
Right.
In those countries, and so you got to be very careful about what class you're in and what you say.
And we all come under the same old common law we follow. Then you go a step further, and you go to some of the Middle Eastern countries.
Right.
You go to some of the Muslim countries, and I'll say it right out front. You better not say a word about anything. You will get your head chopped off. And I know of people who've got hurt. I've lived there. I understand the psyche. I understand what's coming. I really fear that this Christmas there'll be an attack on either us or Europe. Because the way things are going. Yes,
sorry,
go ahead, please.
Mr. Boylan, or you said Patty, right?
Paddy, Patrick, I've been called worse drunk. Anything you can say.
So besides changing the credentials to be a university regent, what are you planning to bring to that industry?
Well, firstly, I guess is my love for education. I want to see people educated, but educated the right way.
You're gonna lower tuition? What are you gonna do?
That is my topmost thing, is lower tuition for the students.
Okay.
But I know it's not always possible. How do you do that? You make cuts. Nobody wants to hear about cuts. Because I know I was a student there, and
you can't make cuts without having a forensic audit before you can make cuts.
So
you gotta know where the money's going first.
It's already been cut too much. So I'm not sure how they're going to do it. I'm not a financial person, but I have a pretty good idea that that's one thing I want to do.
But I'm sure that there are things that we're paying out that you're looking at it like, nah, we don't need to pay that. You know, or do you have that type of influence as far as where dollars are spent?
Right now, no.
No, once
I get in, and if I'm on the subcommittee for, you know, that deals with that, and I forget the name right now, so many subcommittees and things, that they put you on committees, etc. Right. Yes, then I could bring it up to them.
How about some kind of, and to keep going with the whole financial thing, and I know when we did the endorsement interviews, I had asked this question too. So what about some kind of reform to tenure? I mean, I do understand that it is important for tenure, and I do actually agree with it, because you need to retain the biggest and brightest minds, right? Because if you don't, then like who's going to want to go to that college, right? But at the same time, it does get a little ridiculous when you have, like, remember years ago, Dina Titus was a tenured professor at UNLV, and she taught one class a month, and she was making like well over 6 figures, you know, and I looked it up. She wasn't bringing in any research either. It was just for the name, right? So is there any kind of reform that could be done with tenure? Like maybe I've heard examples of like the University of Chicago does this, where they still have tenure, but what they do is they have their tenured professors, they basically make them at least teach like a couple freshman and sophomore classes a month to make sure that they have to stay in the classroom also.
And they should. I agree with you on that. They should. The tenured professors, as far as I know, they all do. Now there may be some, like you gave a good example, and then I think she went on to also be on the legislature where she was getting paid from there at the same time. Kind of, I don't agree with this double dipping by anybody. I don't think you should, because right now none of us could work for the system of higher education, the Regent elect. And which is so great. You know, no one can say, hey, you got that job because you're way up there. Hey, someone's paying. Great. You know, it's all clean. So tenured professors, I think they should be teaching, they should be writing, they should be bringing in some more research, bringing in some money. You've been around so long, you have so much knowledge. Why aren't you bringing in some more connections, at least? I won't say money, let's say more connections. Being in class is a great thing, because they have the knowledge that they must share with all of us, or the others, I mean students, when I say us as students,
Well, do you have anything else for Mr. Boylan?
No, other than I appreciate you coming in.
Oh, sure.
And congratulate you on your win.
Thank you.
I think it's great that there were so many qualified people that were running for, what is it, 5?
5. Yes.
Yeah. I think you'll do well, and
Thank you.
And I appreciate you very much for coming in.
No, I appreciate
and
you guys calling me.
really appreciate just getting the opportunity to talk to you, get to know you a little bit.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, Mr. Boylan, thank you for coming on the program, and congratulations on your
win. Thank you so much. Yes.
And could you look in the camera and say whatever you want and your point of contact?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the veterans in politics, especially Steve. He reached out to me, and I really appreciate that. You guys are great. You're doing a great job in different ways, and you're standing up and fighting for things that guys of my own heart, I would say. I get into a lot of trouble doing that. What did you say? To get in touch with me, sorry.
Point of contact.
My point of contact, yes. Right now I'm using a phone number that I still haven't given out to everybody because I haven't got mine for the Board of Regents yet. And of course I don't have my emails or anything, but...
What are they waiting for? You get sworn in January 5th.
I know, January 5th we get sworn in, they'll give us everything. But for now, it's 702-281-2970, or you could reach me at my personal email. It's P as in Patrick, J as in John, and then Boylan, B as in Bravo, OYLAN @gmail.com. Now, I'm so glad I remembered my phone number because I never called myself. So I'm like, well, what was it? What was the number? But yes, you could get in touch with me if you have any questions, suggestions, ideas, advice. I'm open to it. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from anybody. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate your time. And the young, good-looking, bald brother behind the camera, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Yep.
Thanks again, Mr. Boylan.
Thank you, sir.
Folks, that's Patrick Boylan, Nevada State Regent, District Number 5, elect. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.